Poetry is a matter of life, and I want to live the best life that I want to pursue. I do not think that I'm an artist, but I'm working on my outputs to be as good as it can be. I actively working on my abilities. Poetry is a literary art form that can be written, spoken, or performed. It focuses on the aesthetics of language. So to me, everyone's a poet in a way, because language is the system of communication. So we use a collection of words that express an emotion or idea or subject. But my question is, who am I as someone who tries to write poems? An echo, a machine, a firework, a dream? There is no simple answer. The poem is a vessel. Poetry is liquid. Poetry generally has certain recognizable characteristics. Poems emphasize language musical qualities. This can be achieved through rhyme and rhythm and meter. From sonnets of Shakespeare to the odes of Confucius to the Sanskrit Vedas, poems use condensed language like literature, with all the water wrung out of it. Poems often feature intense feeling, from Rumi's spiritual poetry to Pablo Neruda's Ode to an Onion. Poetry, like art itself, has a way of challenging simple definition. While the rhythmic patterns, in addition to a specific form of poems, poetry is often thought of in terms of different genres and subgenres. A poetic genre is generally a tradition or classification of poetry based on the subject matter, a style, or other broader literary characteristics. Some commentators view genres as natural form of literature. Others view the study of genres as a study of how different works relate and refer to other works. Lyric poetry is a genre that, unlike epic and dramatic poetry, does not attempt to tell a story, but instead is a form of personal nature. Poems in this genre tend to be shorter, melodic, contemplative, rather than depicting characters and actions. It portrays the poet's own feelings, a state of mind, and perceptions. Of the earliest poems were a way to remember stories. Even before the advent of writing, a poem does not need to be lyrical. Rainer Dulles Apfel and Egon Gumringer's Silencio towed the line between visual art and poetry. Meanwhile, E. Cummings wrote poems whose shapes were as important as the words themselves, in this case amplifying the sad loneliness of a single leaf falling through space. If the visual nature of poetry faded into the background, perhaps we'd be left with music. And that's an era that people love to debate. Are songs poems? Many don't regard songwriters as poets in a literary sense, but lyrics from artists like Paul Simon, Bob Dylan, and Tupac Shakur often hold up without the music. In rap poet, elements like rhyme, rhythm, and imagery are inseparable from the form. Take this lyric from Notorious B.I.G. I can hear the sweat trickling down your cheek. Your heartbeat sound like Sasquatch feet, thundering, shaking the concrete. So far, all the examples we've seen have had line breaks. Poetry has a shape that we can usually recognize. Its line breaks help readers navigate the rhythms of a poem. But what if those line breaks disappeared? Would it lose its essence as a poem? Maybe not. Enter the prose poem. Prose poems use vivid images and wordplay, but are formatted like paragraphs. When we look at poetry less as a form and more as a concept, we can see the poetic all around us. Spiritual hymns, the speeches of orators like Martin Luther King Jr., JFK, and Winston Churchill. The waters of poetry run wide and deep. Poetry has evolved over time, and perhaps now more than ever, the line between poetry, prose, song, and visual art has blurred. However, one thing has not changed. The word poetry actually began in verb form, coming from the ancient Greek poesis, which means to create. Poets like craftsmen still work with the raw materials of the world to forge new understanding and comment on what is to be human in a way only humans can. Dartmouth researchers tested this idea by asking robots to pen poetry. A panel of judges sorted through stacks of sonnets to see if they could distinguish those made by man and machine. You may be happy to know that while scientists have successfully used artificial intelligence in manufacturing, medicine, and even journalism, poetry is a different story. The robots were caught red-handed 100% of the time.